Welcome in, and thanks so much for joining me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott Tusa. I'm a Dharma practitioner, meditation teacher, and mentor to other meditators. And welcome to this channel. On this channel, I like to offer practical Buddhism as well as bridges from Himalayan or Tibetan Buddhism, the practices of Tibetan Buddhism and theories, for modern practitioners. I like to offer ways to understand it and practice it and mostly stay in the practical realm. We get into philosophy a little bit because Buddhist philosophy can be practical because it often informs the view of why we're meditating or doing what we're doing. And it also adds to where we, or provides an aim of why we're practicing in the first place, kind of deepens our aim or what we're trying to get out of it. So anyways, welcome. If you're new to the channel, if you've been here for a while and you listen regularly to my podcast, the Buddhist Wisdom Podcast, or watch me on my YouTube channel, thank you so much for continuing to listen. As always, feel free to follow the channel, give a like if you like the content, comment here. I appreciate it a lot. So today's topic is one I've been reflecting on lately. It's also been coming up in my conversations with the meditators I regularly talk to and mentor. And really the context for this is sort of the split that can happen in what we might think of as work for ourselves or transformative spiritual or personal work for ourselves versus work for others. And I've started to realize that personally that this is a false dichotomy that doesn't need to be there for me. Not saying it doesn't need to be there for you. Maybe it serves a purpose for you. So I'm not here to argue necessarily what you should think, but I am here to share some thoughts on how I came to this perspective and why I think this dichotomy of thinking of our own personal work as separate, including our private or silent meditation work, as separate from the work the compassionate action we serve and work for others with, right? Which could be, of course, our job, but it could just be the care we want to provide, the peace we want to bring to the world. So also I should say this is a question I get a lot from meditators who sometimes start to lose confidence in their practice doing anything, right? Or being useful. It's a tricky thing, this word useful, because in Buddhism, we would kind of say it doesn't need to be useful, but that's maybe some content for another video. But either way, I think there still is this real issue where a lot of us who do come to Buddhism or meditation practice, we want to see a better world. We want to see a more compassionate and kind world. I would argue a lot of non-meditators also want to see that. They might have their own versions of what creates that we disagree with, but ultimately they probably want to see that as well. But either way, I think for a lot of people I talk to and meet with often, there can be this sense that our compassionate action needs to be seen, and it needs to have an impact right now, like this very moment. What I've been thinking about lately, and I said mostly for myself, although I do share it with people I work with regularly, is this sense that, I can only serve others. I can only offer, more peace in the world, or more, I don't know how to put it, help the world or better it. I can only do that from my own limitations, right? So for me personally, I have lots of limitations. I'm happy to admit that. I work with them regularly in my practice, and I'm also happy to admit that. That's what I think meditation is for. It's not for becoming a perfect person. It's for actually recognizing our imperfections and transforming them into compassion for ourselves and others and wisdom. So for me, if I'm not working with my imperfections, if I'm not willing to work with the contents of my mind, heart, emotions, etc., I see that as an extreme limitation for what I can offer to others, right? And I think even the idea of offering to others can sometimes go into a category of what we actually want, which is not an offering for others necessarily. I'm not saying others can't get something out of that, but if we're basing it off, some big need or want we have, my question is that truly compassionate action, right? There's a quote I like to use here, and it's something I've reflected on a lot on this topic, which is it goes like this. The quote is we don't help others because we want to help others. We help others because help is needed, right? And a lot of the times I've noticed that need does get interpreted through what we want or what we think is right or correct. Where, what strikes me with that quote is we help because help is needed. It also implies, because the quote is around some other teachings, that quote also implies that we need to be very attuned to others to really understand what's needed, right? Because I don't know about you, I don't always know what I need, right? And I've noticed some of my teachers who are much wiser than me have pointed out things that at the time I didn't really recognize as something I needed. But then as I contemplated it over time, I realized, oh, they were really right. And so they were able to see a need that I didn't even know I had, right? I thought it was over here, and they were like, no, it's over there. And I truly believe this comes from their capacity and practice of leaning into their own confusion at some point, leaning into their own experience, their mind, their emotions, and how they work with them, right? And so for me, this aspect of tuning into others' needs means we have to be very attuned to our own. We have to be very attuned to what is the actual need, where is the actual stagnation happening in relation to our mind, thoughts, emotions, etc. And how do we liberate that? How do we free that up? Obviously, this is one of the reasons I teach from the Buddhist path or Himalayan Buddhist lineages is we don't have to invent that. No one's expecting you to know that. There are lots of human beings who have gone through the same thing, and they've also figured out some ways to work with that. So for me personally, I value that. I value like crowdsourcing my spiritual practice, I guess you could put it that way. So the sense of need, what I've found is, it's very difficult to tune into the needs of others because it's also coming through our own perception. It's coming through our own biases. So I really advocate for, and what I do in my own practice is really keep it on my side of the street for the most part. That doesn't mean we don't help others. That doesn't mean, we don't take an opportunity to serve where we can. It just means that we don't have the hubris to assume we know what another needs. Instead, we work with our own experience, and that allows us to develop compassion and wisdom where we can become more attuned to others. And of course, become skillful in how we communicate with others, how we find out what they need, etc. Right? I mean, a lot of people will tell us, and like I said, we should trust what people think they need. That's fine. And some of us don't really know what we need, right? Because it's quite deep what relieves suffering, and sometimes we get confused in that. But anyways, so essentially, what I also found is that this is a way to sustain our meditation practice in a very healthy way. In the Mahayana Buddhist traditions, we actually work with the intention of bodhicitta quite a lot. There's specific meditations to develop that, which is, more or less translates as the mind of awakening. There's specific meditations to develop that, but we also start our practice with a reflection on that, and we evoke or invoke this motivation or intention. That's why we're practicing. We're practicing because we want to become more skillful at working with our own minds to serve others. So bodhicitta embodies a sense of altruism based in compassion that we recognize until we figure out our own mess. How are we ever going to deal with the mess of another, right? And when we're working with the mind and its complexities, when we're working with, ego clinging and how we view identities and self, when we're working with difficult or challenging emotions, this takes time, as many of you know out there who are practitioners and or meditators. It's not a 1 day, a 1 week, a 1 year thing. And so we need time to be alone and to be with ourselves. We need time to dedicate to formal meditation practice, and we need time to dedicate to informal meditation practice. But when the motivation is for others, it becomes for others, right? Naturally, as we transform, naturally, as we start to open up our own self-cherishing, our own clinging to self, our own, this idea that we become happy through serving self. When we open that up and we see it's actually relational, that we become more happy through serving others, what are we going to do? We're going to naturally serve others more. So it's sort of baked into the idea that when we do transformative work and meditation and Dharma practice with the right motivation, with an altruistic motivation, the result is going to be altruistic conduct. So in one way, this is tough in the beginning because we need to trust that. And in another way, I think we can doubt that because it takes time to see results. So that's, of course, where it's not saying we should only sit on the cushion and wait for it to come. No, we should, of course, serve and help where we can. But we also have to understand there's limits to that, right? We're going to be doing that from a limited perspective. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means we have to, understand that. And then for me, there's the continual aspiration to grow, to transform, to become a more skilled friend to others, a more skilled servant to others, I guess you could put it that way, or sort of helper. I don't know. So this is one of the ways I think about it. This is more the positive way to think about it. But there's also another way, which I think we could see what happens when we don't respect our limitations. We can actually create more of a mess, right? And I'm not going to point them out. There's many examples in the world of this, of sort of good intention, unwise conduct, right? And meaning the intention was to help another or a situation or a group or a particular problem. But the development was still not there, and therefore there wasn't the way to think it out and see the consequences. Everything's based off cause and effect generally, from a Buddhist perspective, not saying you have to believe that. And so it's difficult to see the intricacies of cause and effect because it looks good, on paper. Okay, if I do this, such and such, this is going to have this outcome. But it's actually connecting to thousands, if not millions and billions of other kinds of cause-effect relationships, right? Which is going to affect the outcome. And so it's very difficult to see over time, right? Because something might even look beneficial in the beginning and then change. If we study history, there's many examples of that. So this isn't to say we should freeze and not do anything ever. Obviously, no one advocates for that, including the Buddha. It's just to say we need to merge compassion and wisdom. And compassion and wisdom merge when we work on our own side of the street, when we take the time each day to do that. And again, as I said, this doesn't mean you need to take all the time to do that. You can go into your job to serve. You can go and, serve with your family. You can take on other roles of service in the world for part of your day. But I would recommend to make sure to spend part of your day on your inner work, working with your emotions, thoughts, biases, self-centeredness, all of that, and opening that up through meditation and Buddha Dharma. This really helps. And as we can see, it's sort of like, I don't know, it's like going to the house of others to try to clean their house, but our house is totally trashed. Does that make any sense? Doesn't make that much sense, right, to me. So anyways, I hope this is helpful. Just some different ways to think about this. And ultimately, I think it's good news. It's not an either or. It's just a recognition that we can take joy in our meditation. That's really where I'm coming from in this, because a lot of people struggle. They feel sometimes, okay, meditation isn't doing anything. You're just sitting there. And some people even think it's selfish. Maybe I should say this as a side comment. It can be selfish, right? Definitely. If we're just sitting there to create a feel-good experience, yes, it's selfish. Is it bad? No. Some of us need that in our life just to have a moment of peace, feel a little bit better, right? Again, no judgment here, but it would not be the same as what I'm talking about. What I'm referring to is really coming from the foundations of Buddhism, which is meditation. We can use it to sort of feel better, or we can use it to transform. And when we're using it to transform, we're talking about transforming into compassion and wisdom that is of service to the world, right? So that's just one thing to watch out for. But I would say if we have a good intention and we're aiming our meditation for that, whether it does that or not in the moment, just trust. Just take joy. Rejoice at the end of every practice session. Emphasize bodhicitta. Emphasize the motivation of why you're doing it. You're not just doing it for yourself alone. And over time, it will start to leak out in a positive way. It will start to affect, probably for the most part, those who are around us the most, right? Those who we interact with. I've had some friends say, one of the most rewarding experiences was their family after some time. Maybe after they're meditating some years, 10 or 15 years, their family started to comment, what happened to you? Like, you really changed. What happened? And I think that's a really good sign that, because who's going to notice us the most? Those who are around the most. Who's going to notice when we transform and become a kinder, more compassionate person? But we don't have to become one. We can just practice and let it unfold. That's what this person was saying. This particular story wasn't someone who started to change their behavior. Maybe they did a little bit, right? But they didn't sort of seek out to trick anyone or pretend to be someone else. It just came out of their practice naturally over the years, right? So that's a good sign. I think the people who are going to notice it the most are the ones who are around us the most. And usually those are the ones we can affect, and those are the ones we can help the most, which is fine. We don't all have to affect, big swaths of people. Anyways, so yeah. So let me know your thoughts. As always, I like to hear what you think and if this is resonating or not. And if you have anything to comment on sort of, I guess, breaking away this barrier between work for self versus work for others, meaning how can we allow that barrier to, it doesn't need to be there. So how can we resolve it? How can we allow it to dissolve more? If you have any ideas on how you do that, let me know. So thanks so much. Take care.